We'll get started in just a minute for joining online. Today, actually, really quickly, Professor Storm, would you mind testing the audio?
Sure. Can you hear
me? We can actually hear you a little too well. There we go.
Well, I could whisper. Is that better?
No, this is good. I spent a little bit of time today just trying to fiddle with settings so that we could hopefully hear and present. And I learned that the screen must be shared with Zoom in order to do that. It's a weird setup.
By the way, this setup, I mean, where the camera is, how the camera is zoomed, we can see the whiteboard so much better.
Oh, good. I did double check the video in the last one, and because I pin it, you can see it pretty well in the recording. So I think we're good.
Okay. All right.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for doing that. All right, we're going to get started with Figma today. We're going to do a couple of things. I really want to introduce you guys early on in the process. Gerben, go ahead and write your name on the board. I want to introduce you guys. Sorry, like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to talk with my new mouth. I want to introduce you guys early on to auto layout. You're going to hear so many different workflows and so many different ways to work in Figma. I will be upfront and transparent with all of you guys that Figma is new to all of us, right? Whether we're faculty, I've been using Figma for the past 7, 8 years, something like that. So I'm pretty well versed in it. But also Figma likes to change things seemingly every week. Certainly every year at Config. If you've never been to Config, I would highly recommend try to find your way to get to one. It's a really cool conference. That said, I want to introduce you guys early to auto layout because if you start doing auto layout in the low fidelity state of your guys' designs, it seems like a waste of time, but it really isn't. Because if you just start automatically thinking about designing with auto layout, it's going to make your design process so much simpler. And remember on, what is today? Today's Thursday. Remember on Tuesday how I mentioned design from the outside in? This is where auto layout comes really, really, really in handy. Because if you design from the outside in, you don't have to worry so much about the constraints of the box, and you mostly have to worry about the content that you're adding. So we'll get to all of that. For the two of you guys that just joined, go ahead and write your name on the board. I did it already. Thank you. Oh, you did. Thank you. Since you guys showed up to class today, you all got 50 points of extra credit. Thank you. So that said, here's what we're going to do. I wager that most of you guys probably know this, but I also have to record this lecture for some people who don't know this, right? So if any of this is a refresher, just bear with me for a little bit. This is Figma. Figma is going to work very, very differently from most of your design softwares that we've used up to this point. Up until this point, you guys have had to go to File, Save As, all of that. Figma, you don't need to do any of that. This is all a cloud-based design tool. You can do that, but it's certainly by no means the most efficient or the most practical way to design in Figma. Figma can get a little bit complicated in its file organization, but it's really actually quite simple. So just bear with me here. For you guys, I would recommend, particularly as you guys are working in college, just get really comfortable with file organization. I'll tell you the way that I keep my shit organized is by separating in Figma different classes, right? So since I'm in the class with most of you guys, HSE 542. This is our UAV project that we're working on. So that's there, and that's just a completely separate project. Similarly, I have another HSE class, which is 598. That has a separate project. My 450, 550 class that I teach has a different project. All of my clients have different projects. Even my lectures for 540 have its own folder. So I would just really encourage separate by class, right? Especially as you get into more UX topics going through your program, just keep it separated that way. You can create a new project. Hang on, I gotta hide a couple of things. Up in the top right here, if you're on the projects tab, you can just create a new project up here. There we go. And it's going to ask you for emails. If you're the only one that's working in this, you don't need to put anything here. But I want to really preface the sort of important paradigm that Figma has brought to the design community. And I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a forecast, and you can take it to the bank if it ever comes true. If Adobe fails to figure out how to do this outside of like their shitty Adobe, what is that called? Express. Yes, that one, Adobe Express. If they can't figure out how to do this outside of Adobe Express, and what I mean is like by integrating it into their main softwares, I think Adobe's going to die. We are in an industry that predicates itself on collaboration. You cannot go into a design project by yourself and expect to come out 6 weeks later with something amazing. By the way, quick plug, we have technically, there are limited seats, so not everyone's going to be able to go, but there's a field trip on Monday. The seats are still open. If you want to go see a press check, one of my projects is going to be running on press, and I got permission from the printer to bring a few students with me. So if you're interested in that, there's some stuff in the hallway channel. But the reason that I bring that up was not as a plug, but because that project, it's a personal project. It's something that I am funding myself. It's something that I'm putting together myself. But at the same time, if you think for a second that I just stood behind the screen and moved my mouse and came up with some wild and crazy ideas, and then now it's going to print. Mind you, it's about a $30,000 print job that we're sending. You'd be damn wrong. I've been working on this for a couple of months now, and even just the last iteration of what we did, I would encourage you, someone keep me honest, ask the printer how many times I sat in their office asking questions. I even took what we're printing to several of my former creative directors and bosses and asked for feedback and opinions. And the only reason that I had to do that was because a lot of Adobe processes don't allow for this type of collaboration. So the reason that this emails, comma separated pop-up happens here is because as you guys are working as a team, you can add their email into here and they can all have access to whatever files are in that project. And they can also be working on it simultaneously with you. You can think of it like a giant whiteboard, okay? I'm gonna skip this for right now. Just hit the X. There we go, create project. So now we have a blank slate, right? We can just work in this. Now, I really want to spend some time to stress upon you guys the different types of projects, or the different types of files that are in here. And I apologize, Professor Storm's face is in the way and that can't change, but at least that's prettier than Figma. I can tell you that what's at the top there is design. It's the word design. And then the next option is Fig Jam. And then the next option is slides, and then buzz, and then cite, and then make, okay? I'll be completely honest with you. I haven't experimented with Figma Buzz yet. just haven't had the time to experiment with it. I also haven't experimented with Figma Make, but speaking with a lot of industry professionals over the past couple of months, they're saying it's becoming a really integrative part of their workflow. So I would really impress upon you to experiment with it. I actually don't even fully know what it does yet, but get in there, mess around with it. Here's the thing. I am going to encourage every single one of you guys to do your own research when it comes, well, I'm going to put the air quotes around the word research. I'm going to encourage you guys to find your own information on Figma. It changes so often that it's good for you guys to find some content creators on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or wherever to figure out how to make this one button do the prototyping that you want it to do, right? There are so many different options that you can do in Figma. We can't possibly cover all of them in this class. I can't even begin to scratch the surface in this class. I can show you some basic prototyping, but at the same time, I also want you all to zoom out. It's really easy within Figma to get a little bit trapped in the, how do I make this button animate this way and go over here and do this thing and do, right? You can get in the weeds with it. I'm going to tell you this right now. Stop sharing for a second. I'm going to tell you this right now. I've been doing this for 12 years, and in those 12 years, never once have I had to animate a freaking button, unless I wanted to do it for myself. From a professional workflow perspective, okay, hang on, let me back up a little bit. There might be one instance where I've had to animate a button, or really do anything to that degree of specialty. And that is if a developer really doesn't fucking get it. Which happens sometimes. That's not their fault. It's just, you might be communicating it one way and maybe that's just, they're not quite, maybe they use a different language for it. That happens sometimes. And so sometimes you might need to go and create an example just to show. Okay? Oftentimes, what I find myself doing more than anything is one, creating a design system, something that is kind of like a style guide or a Bible from which you can pull from, and you don't have to reinvent that button every single time, right? We use this button, it's this wide, it's this tall, it has this color, and the corner radiuses are rounded by this much, and it's filled with this text, right? That's a style, web style guide, basically. So just be careful with how much time you're investing into making it perfect. Now, I'm going to contradict what I just said, because Figma's sites is interesting. It's very interesting, actually. And I hear from a lot of you guys every semester about like, can I make my portfolio in Figma sites? Can I do this in Figma sites? And it's like, we're not quite there yet. Figma sites has a lot of potential. I'll be very, very honest. And if you don't know what Figma sites is, you can build your layout and your website within Figma. You can prototype it and then directly publish it from Figma. That's the intent of Figma sites. We're not quite there yet because it's still working in kind of a dirty way. And what I mean by that is it's just not really building good code yet. And then even beyond that, if one thing breaks in your prototype, your entire site could just be trashed. So I would just say, like, it's got promise, keep your eyes on it, but I don't think we're at a point where we're using it to that extent yet. So that's my own hot take. Any questions so far? Good? Okay, so we went over each of these for the most part. Design is where most of you, this is where you guys are going to be doing module, okay? It literally creates a design file. That's it. It's going to be very similar to what you guys all have worked in Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, all that. FigJam, the description that I usually give this one is it's like a giant whiteboard. You can think of this like Miro, if you've ever used Miro. Really, it's an ideation space. And it's actually a really cool space to collaborate, work together, keep notes, use sticky notes, affinity map, diagram, all that kind of stuff. Sitemap. And then Figma Slides is actually how I build all of my presentations that I give to you guys. I actually didn't use them for this class, but I use it for another class. I have to rebuild the slides for this class in Figma slides because I like it better. So for right now, we're going to just create a design file, plain and simple. Now, Figma gets really, really handy if you know the keyboard commands, just like every program that we've used. But what was the keyboard command for the rectangle tool in Adobe? Does anyone remember? M standing for marquee, right? Figma somehow got a brain and said, let's make it R for rectangle. You also have this funny looking thing. This is your frame tool. Again, Figma has a brain, and instead of making it Shift O to do artboard, it's just, right? Again, Adobe be Adobe. Fun fact, remember the pen tool you all hated so much? You have one of those in Figma too, it's right here. I'll be honest with you guys. You might be sitting back and asking yourself the question, well, if we can do vector stuff in Figma, then why didn't we just build our logos and do certain things in Figma? And the reason for that is because it's not there yet. Figma is not an illustration tool. Their pathfinding is garbage. You can create some simple shapes. You can do some cool stuff. Also, the output from Figma is a lot more limited. So that's why we didn't do that. But you do have the pen tool there just in case. And I gotta move some stuff. Within each of these tools, this toolbar here, just judging based off of what we were doing in Adobe tools, this toolbar here might seem a little bit limiting, yeah? It's not, I guarantee. You can usually next to each of these tools, you have some drop down. Here, if you need a line, you can just hit L on your keyboard. Go figure. There's also an arrow tool in here. There's an ellipse tool, a polygon, a star. You can add an image or a video. That's all within the rectangle tool. Similarly, within the pen tool, you also have a pencil tool if you want to do a little bit more free-handed work. And then within the frame tool, you have a section and a slice tool. Who knows what the section tool is for?
Section.
Oh, very, very wise. Yes. Yes, it does create a section, but why would you use it?
Is it like the component which we use in development?
No, it has nothing to do with building a page or a website or an app or anything. It keeps your shit organized. That's it. That's all it does. Guys, I really should have brought an example with me. I will, maybe by the end, I will pull up this example. When I was working at Drive Time, we came up with one project. We came up with over 90 variables for our homepage. And we tested every single one of them. It's what we call a tree test. And in order to even just wrap your brain around 90 different versions of your homepage, you kind of got to be good at keeping stuff organized. So this section allows you to group things and label things in certain ways so that you can kind of keep track of them. And then similarly, you have a slice tool. I'll be honest with you, never once had to use this. There are some, actually that's not true, I have had to use it once, but I don't remember why I used it. You probably won't need the slice tool. So really, you're going to be working with a lot of frames, you're going to be working with a lot of shapes, you're going to be obviously working with the text tool, which is over here. And then I would really, because God, I'm working with some of you guys on group projects in HSE, and some of you guys don't even know that the comments tool exists. Leave comments, right? Keep track of, start getting peer feedback. One of the things about your guys' portfolio that I always look for is, have you incorporated feedback? Have you worked on a team? Did you get outside opinions and outside perspectives? Or did you just sit behind a screen for 6 weeks and come out saying, it's ready, right? So start collecting feedback. Just get people to leave comments and annotations on your work about what's working well, what isn't. As you do usability testing and user testing, get comfortable with leaving notes on your work really quickly, okay? And then this guy, actions. There's actually a better way to do this, and I think it's through plugins, so you probably won't even need this either. But there are some things in here that are important, like showing your rulers. I find that rulers are really helpful because they allow you to draw guides and things like that. You can turn those off in here. You can turn off the UI if you want. If that ever goes away, you can always right click and just hit show hide UI. So just go in there and fiddle around with it for a little bit if you've never used it. All right, getting a little bit more specific into the projects that we're doing within Module 5. I've told you all that the device size that you're going to be working with is what? 1440, thank you. So over here under desktop, it's already baked in. Right here, desktop, 1440 by 1024. Boink. There you go, we've got a frame. Good morning, everyone. It's nice and bright. By the way, in case you are not a fan of dark UI, you can always change it. I don't normally. Should be in your settings somewhere. I'm not going to change it, but you can change it. You can also change, I think, just the color of the workspace. I'll leave that to you guys to figure out. Now, I mentioned that we're going to be starting not with a frame, right? I think it's okay to have a frame on the page, but before we even get started adding anything to this page, or before we can start adding elements to this page, what do we first need to do? Design system, not quite. I think I heard it over here. Grid, yes. We need to set up a grid. And so down here, we have what is called a layout guide. If we click into that, now we see the word grid. Now, I'm going to tell you guys this right now. This is a garbage grid. You will never use this grid. And if you can come up with a valid reason for using this grid, points to you. All you have to do is come over here to where it says grid and change it to columns. And already we're 1% better, but still not quite there. 5 columns is a little bit abnormal. I would say if we're following the rule of 8s, we would probably want 8 columns, right? Another acceptable set of columns might be 12, okay? 12 columns is also fine for desktop, although if you ask me, that gets a little bit more granular than I think they ought to be. For tablet, I would say anywhere from 4 to 8 would be acceptable. And then for mobile, and everyone listen really closely because I see this every semester. If you end up working with mobile, you can set up a 2 or a 4 column grid, but you using all of those columns individually is almost never acceptable. You might get down to using 2 columns, but there really isn't a need for it. You set it up so that you have good breakpoints, okay? Everyone clear on that? If I ever see anyone break a column of text on a mobile design into 2 columns, I'm going to kick a puppy. Don't break the text. Okay, so here I'll set up an 8-column grid. And then down in the margin, I have a good recommendation for where to start. Oftentimes, you want your margin to be about 10% of the total width of your screen. Give or take, okay? That's just a good starting point. You can adjust from there. The reason that I say that is that it keeps your rule of 8s in place, okay? So with our device width being 1440, what would my margins be? What was it?
120?
140. 144, right? There we go. So now we've got our margins set up. And then I'm going to do something that I find to be particularly helpful because I always like to know where my fold on the screen is. And so I actually end up setting up another grid, but this time I do it as rows. And then from here, what I end up doing is changing the stretch to top. Okay? Now everyone watch closely, because here you can set up as many counts as you want. Typically, I recommend to make this as many sections as you're going to have on, let's say, the home page or whatever page you're working with. And that doesn't always apply, but I typically recommend to make it the height of the screen. So here, we know the height of our screen is 1024, right? A sec. Back over here. So height, I'm going to make it 1024. And it's going to look like nothing happened. I mean, obviously we know something happened, but it looks a little wrong, right? That's because you are not limited to the height of that one screen. It's very rare that I've ever seen a website where where all you had was just what's in the screen, right? Normally there's a scroll of some kind. And for whatever reason, everyone who ever picks up Figma for the first time thinks they're limited to just working in that artboard. Make the artboard the height that you need it for the page that you're working with, okay? So here, if I have 5 sections, there we go. And we know now roughly how high the screen is, give or take, right? So that we know that where the content needs to lie, right? So you guys all within your Module 5 project, you need to have your headshot, your logo, your personal statement, and at least a portion of your case studies all above the fold. Okay? What I mean by that is this guy right here, that is your fold. Anything that's below that, you can still have it, but you need to have those elements above the fold. Or at least partially above the fold. Okay? Anyone have questions about that?
You don't mean like in the menu, right? You mean it actually physically on the
Actually physically on the screen.
Right.
Yep. So we'll add some content and I'll give you an example. So one of the first things that we might want to start with would be designing our navigation, right? That's something that every website, app, any digital product that you ultimately go on to make is probably going to need some degree of navigation, okay? Now I mentioned designing from the inside out and not the outside in, right? So we've got that set up, that's all good, let's move on. So we want to remember working within the rule of 8. So where do we want to start with our navigation? Do we want to start with a button? Do we want to start with our logo? Where do we want to start? Text? Okay. What kind of text? Menu? Okay. Let's do this. Let's start with a button, okay? Because there's text within a button. So I'll just start by drawing out a text box. And if I'm working with the rule of 8s, and remember, we're in digital, what is the minimum font size that I should have within that?
8.
No. Working in digital.
12.
No.
16.
16. Why 16?
Double 8.
Double A?
Double 8.
Double 8? That's part of it. Think about accessibility.
8 is too small.
8 is way too small. No, there should be no website in the world that has 8-point text. Period.
Is it the same on mobile too then? Like
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. It is the same across the board. Now, I'm oversimplifying a little bit. If you guys want to know the actual standards, look up, you're going to hear this said a couple of different ways, so I'm going to try to say as many ways as I can. I call it WCAG. Other people call it WCAG. I think that sounds odd to me. However you want to pronounce it, this isn't a GIF or GIF problem. This is just saying it versus spelling it, right? Those accessibility standards, there are a number of things that factor in accessible text. The first of those is typically font size or typeface size, really, is what I should say. The other is contrast from the text to the background. And they just launched WCAG 2.3.2, 2.2? Professor Storm, help me out here. It's something 0.2, I think it's 2.2.
2.2.
2.2, okay, thank you. So they just launched that, a couple of weeks ago, I think. And so the accessibility standards didn't change for the contrast ratios, was something that I noticed. So text needs to be, at a minimum, there needs to be a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1. So that gets a little bit complex. Basically, you just want your text to be high enough contrast. And there's plugins that I'll show you guys to run so that you can check this accessibility. That's the minimum contrast ratio, 4.5 to 1. Ideally, you want all of your text to be 7 to 1, I think is what it is.
Yep.
Thank you. And there are different standards for both body copy and headlines. So if you have a headline, then it changes a little bit to where the upper end of that is actually 4.5, and I think the lower end of that is 3.5 or something like that. Best get is if you're just operating at 4.5, you're typically safe. Okay, 4.5 to 1. In other words, if you put yellow text on a white background, you're guaranteed to fail. Okay. If you put some colors of green on a white background, you're guaranteed to fail. Even some reds, right? So you've got to think about the color contrast. And then another element that goes into it is the weight of the font. Remember how I said that clearly this didn't stick because the amount of logos that I'm seeing in 4.3 that are written in script fonts is alarming to me. But remember when I said that script fonts don't make good digital fonts? Part of the reason is because script fonts have a lot of thicks and thins, right? And those thins oftentimes become the crux of accessibility because one, script fonts are just awful to read anyways. Outside of Connecticut wedding invites. But beyond even just that, you end up with these thicks and thins that just become inaccessible, no matter how contrasty you make them. Same thing can happen with some serifed typefaces, although there are exceptions for those. Am I missing anything as far as accessibility goes, Professor Storm? I'm putting it on.
The official rules, I get cranky when text is centered.
Yes. Okay. So centering text.
Blocks of text.
That is the first thing that most design students often do is they're like, ooh, I want to make it designy, center justified, right? Or the other one that I've seen that really chaps my ass is when you full justify text. That might even be a little bit worse than center justifying. And basically what that does when you center justify text, the edges of the text that are extended, that's called a rag. That is the rag of your typography. So it makes this really hard to reset to, right? You read this line, you read that line, and then you're like, wait, was I on this line or that line? And your brain can't compose where you are within this line of text. Okay? So center justified, bad, don't do that. There are some exceptions to it. For example, if you only have one or sometimes two lines of text, that's generally acceptable. Sometimes headlines are acceptable to be center justified, but it's almost always a good bet to just left justify. Okay. The other one that I mentioned was full justification. You kind of do the opposite. You get rid of the rag completely. So it looks kind of like that. Okay, and the reason that this is bad is because you start introducing what are called rivers into your text, where you have these like spaces between words, and trying to make a river here. And you can almost like find your way through it. Okay, this annoys the living crap out of me. Unless you're designing for like a legal contract, stay away from it. Anything else I'm missing? I think we're good. Questions on accessibility? Okay, that was a little bit of a tangent, but it was a good tangent. Okay, so starting with text, right? I'm just going to start there. This is a button. Over here, it's set at 12. I'm going to make it 16 because we've determined that that's kind of the lower end of text. There are some exceptions if you're working with white text on, or I'm sorry, black text on a white background. In that situation, and actually you don't want it to be pure black or pure white, you want it to be kind of off just to kind of, screens have this weird contrast thing where if you end up with too much contrast, they create what's called color vibration. Or contrast vibration is actually a better term for it. So in those situations, you can sometimes eke down to 12 points or even 10 points, but it's generally best to start with 16 points. So I've got my text in here. I'm going to center the text. I know I just spent a bunch of time saying don't center it, but we're working with a button here, right? And we want our text to be centered within the shape of the button, okay? What I was talking about up here, that's all body copy or headlines, okay? So we've got that. I'm also going to center the text vertically, okay? So if we're looking at our text box now, we've got a lot of space on all the sides, okay? I'm actually going to get rid of that. I'm going to come over here to my layout section, and I'm going to apply the words auto width. Okay? It's this little line that has an arrow. We'll get to each of these in a little bit. Maybe not today, but we'll touch on each of them. Now that I have that set to auto width, what I'm going to do is on my keyboard, I'm going to hit the command Shift A. What did I just do? Auto layout. I applied auto layout. There's another way that you can do that, and they change this every so often. So bear with me.
What's the key combination again?
Shift A. Where is it?
Used to be a plus sign.
It used to be a plus sign, and now they've changed it. Okay, they moved it here for whatever reason. So it's under auto object and then add auto layout. Or you could spend a lot less time if you just memorize Shift A. Yes.
You can do right click and find the auto layout.
Oh, can you? Okay, so other way, right click on the object and then add auto layout. Again, you could save a lot of time if you just memorize Shift A. You're going to use it enough, you probably should. So Shift A to add auto layout, and it's going to add a word around this that says frame plus number. Okay, depends on how many frames you have, but here, this is a really good opportunity for you guys to stop and start naming things, because this is going to get out of hand really quickly. So, whoops. Just double click on the words themselves, okay? And then I'm just going to say button. Maybe number it too, because you can have several different iterations of buttons. I'll name this button 1, okay? So we've got that. Oftentimes, buttons also have some nice, pretty colors behind them, right? Maybe let's make this one blue. So I'll come down to my fill. I'll hit the plus button. Oh no, everything's white. Change the color. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the beginnings of a button, okay? Now, everyone stop what you're doing and look at me. I have a philosophy. I think this world is a horrible, dark, and evil place, and everyone just needs a bear hug. That's it. Where I'm getting at with this, and it depends on the styling of your brand, but this is a default that I have always turned to in times of crisis that we're currently in. Round the corners. Make it soft. Give everyone a little bit of a bear. Okay? Those rounded corners just it makes your design a little bit nicer, a little bit more approachable. Okay? So in order to do that, you have this appearance panel here. Just change this to, I don't know, 8. It doesn't take much. You don't need a whole lot, but that's already just like, oh, it's a little cuter. Right? It's less aggressive. Okay? You can also take the time right now to come in here and just say, yeah, you know what, let's go find a different font. Right? I don't like that one actually. There, workspace. Make it bold. Ta-da! Okay. We have a button. We're off to a good start. Now, I also want to make sure that my button follows the rule of 8s. So I need to make a couple of adjustments. Over here, see this text? Or this number here? That's not the rule of 8s, is it? Now it is. Problem solved. Okay? Make sure that every single thing that you do applies to the rule of 8s. Guys, I have had hiring managers look for this. It's the weirdest thing. And different companies use different strategies, but the rule of 8s is by far the most used one. Okay? So we've got our button here now. I do want to prototype this a little bit. Yeah.
Is it possible to change the color slightly?
Yeah, hard to see?
Yeah, hard to see. The
So let's actually just take a minute. You mentioned it's hard to see.
Yeah.
Let's check the accessibility on that. Let's go to plugins. You guys aren't going to have this. You'll need to add the plugin. You can just come down here to manage plugins and search for it. There's 2 that I'm going to recommend because when one's on the fritz, the other one tends to work, and vice versa. The first one is A11Y. This one's probably the best one. This is directly tied to WCAG. The second one is this one up here. It's called Contrast. I just recommend having both of those plugged in so that you can check them. I'm going to hit A11Y and run the check. Believe it or not, this actually passes AAA color. So this is still pretty good, but for the
So is it doing the text only, or is it doing
Yeah,
the?
it's doing the text plus the background.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's doing both.
I think I'm having difficulty with the button
And the
and the
background.
background.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, oh, you're saying the black background with the blue button?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I see. So I'm actually going to make it a little bit lighter. And obviously, like now you can see the rounded corners, right? You can see the button versus the background. That's not super important, but let's just run our contrast checker again. Well, damn, we failed. Okay. Here, let's play a little game for a second. Pick a color, any color. Green. Okay.
Dark green.
Tell me where you want me to stop.
Right here.
Right here?
No, down.
No?
Like grayish.
Right here?
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Everyone agrees? Do you think that's accessible?
Maybe on the border.
No.
Let's see. Not accessible at all.
Wait, I got one to set accept green. It was like dark green.
Okay? So,
like
in order for this to even be remotely accessible,
yeah, that was what I was
let's actually see because we can adjust it. So our text is already as light as it can be. It's white. Let's make this a little darker. So right about there, we're starting to pass AA. And if we want this to be AAA, we got to be right about there. Okay. So that's going to start training your eye to start looking at things. You would be shocked at how many places you go in your life. That's not accessible. That's not accessible. What shit designer built that? That's not accessible, right? So just pay attention to it out in the world, it's there. Okay, so we've got a button. I'm gonna change this back to blue because that's gonna help me in the next part of what I'm gonna do. I apologize to your eyes if that's a little bit hard to see. The first thing that I wanna do is I wanna come up here to this little, it's a quad shape turned diamond, okay? It says create a component. The keyboard command is Command Shift K, I think. No, Command Option K. I apologize. What did I just do? I made it a component, okay? You don't need components for everything, guys. You really don't. But what a component does is it makes it very, very easy to update anything. Okay, so right now I'm working in what we would call, I mean, really a low fidelity shouldn't have any color. So actually, let's just make this black. Let's make it a little gray. Actually, I'm gonna make this really easy for everyone to see.
Or we can change the background of your artboard.
There we go. Now we can see it. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So right now we're working in low fidelity. Okay. There's no color. There's not even real text in there. This text is going to update later. Okay. I'll show you guys where this comes in handy really quick. Up here on the right, I have this little plus sign. Within a diamond, I'm going to add a variant. Okay. So now we've got our initial button and another button within our component that's now outlined by a dash. I'm going to change this a little bit. What I want to do is when I click on it and then let go, I want a very slight color change to happen as I'm clicking. Okay? But then as soon as I let go, I want it to change. I'm creating a micro interaction. Okay? So I'll click on the button here, the second variant that I made, and I'm going to change the color just to be a little darker. Pretty good, right? Let's just double check our contrast really quick. We're good. We're passing accessibility. We're good. So, and by the way, if that doesn't work for you, it's probably because you haven't selected whatever it is that you're checking. You have to select and then run it. So we've got our buttons here now. Now I need to prototype it. I'll come up to this little second module up in the top right. I apologize, Professor Storm's face is in the way, but we like to see that. There's a little button up in the top right that says prototype. You can click on that. And then I'm going to select the first button, and you'll see this little nodule that pops up. Depending on where you're at, it might be to the right, it might be at the bottom, it might be at the left, or it might be at the top. Click and drag. Yep.
I missed the point. How you made the second one? The second button on
Yeah.
the variant?
Let me go back really quick.
You can do it.
So here I just have the component in the design window. Come up here to add variant. It's the little square with a plus, or the diamond with a plus inside of it. Top right. Sorry, it's behind Professor Storm.
The diamond with plus.
Oh, okay.
See it?
Alright, yeah.
Okay. You got it?
Yes.
Cool. Alright. So we add a variant. You can change the color of this, of the variant itself. Make it a little bit darker. And then come up to prototype, top right. Click on your first button, your first variant. Drag the little nodule here down to the second button. You're going to get this interaction pop-up. Okay? Right now it's set to on-click. You would think that that's what you want to happen, right? I click on it and then I let go. You got to think about this, okay? I will tell you guys this, on-click is probably one of the least used interaction. There are uses for it, but you will probably not use this as much as some of these other ones. For example, while hovering gets a little bit complicated. Mouse enter, you can use that. What I'm looking for is actually mouse down. Okay, so while my mouse is pressed down, I want it to change to the second variant. And then I'm going to select my second variant here and connect it to the above variant. And I'm going to do mouse up. Okay. So we've got that. I'm going to leave the animation as instant, just for now. You can get much more complex with this. And now I've got this button component. Guys, this is the basis of a design system. It's just building in these components like this. Okay. So now if I want to add these buttons to this frame, hang on. I can take the first one, I can hold Option and drag. I'll just move this over here. Button added. Okay. If I go to the desktop and preview it, and I click on it, clicking, not clicking, clicking, not clicking, clicking, not clicking. It's interactive, right? That's all based on the prototyping that we did within the component. I didn't have to do anything here. Now, I mentioned that making components is really, really nice because what happens, let me update this. Link 1. Also, do you guys notice how as I'm changing this, what's happening? The button is getting wider as my text gets wider. Ain't that cool? So, oops, hang on, I'm still in the prototype window. Okay, we've got 3 buttons there, right? They're all in gray. Okay. Now, you're the client. You're like, you know what? I don't like gray. I want it to be blue. Okay, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client, I'll just come over here. Blue, text, white. Ta-da! I had to update one thing and not 3 things. Okay, so this is where building in components becomes really, really helpful. Okay. Similarly, I can update this one. You're like, by golly gosh, please don't actually do this. You're like, well, when I click, I want it to be red. Yeah, please don't do this. Well, that interaction that I built is now also going to be updated. Okay. Now it's doing some funny stuff because I just typed in the actual link name instead of changing it within the component, but everyone understands what just happened there? Okay. Now, let's say that that is part of our navigation. You can also set it up a little bit differently if you wanted to. You could have the width fixed. Right now I have it hugging to the content. If I want the width and the height to be fixed, I can set that. So we mentioned using the rule of 8s. Rather than 51 pixels, 48 is about the minimum. Did I do that right? 8, 16, 24, 40, 48. Okay, yeah, sorry, math is math. 48 is about the minimum click space for a finger. Okay, if you look, pixels are actual measurements. Okay, and the average tip of a user's finger is about 48 pixels. So particularly if you're designing for mobile, 48 is the minimum. Okay, for height or width, doesn't matter. So if you're designing one of those little app icons, 48 pixels is absolutely as small as you can get. Okay? Usually they're bigger. So here, I'm pretty close to 52, right? 52 is, no, 56 would be the closest. So I'm just gonna go 5, 6. Made it a little bit taller, right? But now we're working within the rule of 8s. And then similarly with the width, What I like to do is no math. So I know 155 is pretty close to 160, which I think should be 8 times 20, right? So there we go. And now what's going to happen is if I come in here and I retype this, notice that it's no longer stretching with the text, right? So now you, as the designer, you are now constrained. We mentioned constraints can be a good thing, right? You are constrained to how wide your text is, as opposed to letting the text wrap to the button.
How did you lock the button?
What was that?
How did you lock the button inside?
So over here, I changed, hang on a sec, gotta select the right thing. Select the button, just the outside shape. And then over here in the width and height, change it from hug to fixed. Okay. You can also set minimum width and maximum width. I find that pretty helpful with buttons because you may only want it to be so small and you may only want it to be so wide, right? So I'll let you guys explore that on your own. Any questions for where we're at now?
Change the value directly, it also change the.
Good? Yeah.
I feel like when you're creating a component that shows up a lot, you don't necessarily want it to hug the
Right.
like to be a variant size. Like, is there a situation that's used?
Okay, I'm gonna repeat back what you said just to make sure I understand it. When you create a component, there are situations where you don't want it to hug.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm asking if like when would you want it to hug? Or like,
So I think that having it hug is actually more common than not having it hug.
okay.
And the reason for that is you're often working with variables that might be out of your control. For example, you can't always control that your button is exactly 12 characters and those characters are monospaced and exactly the same size, right? So they're going to change a little bit. So I would actually say a hug for a button, depending on the application, might be normal. Particularly like navigation. Anything that's responsive, a hug would be normal. Now, if you're working on a mobile device, you might not want that button to be hugged. You might just want that button to be the width of all 4 columns, or maybe 2 columns, right? Those are good scenarios for either justification. Really, it kind of depends on the application. And it also depends on the design intent a little bit. Okay, so we've got a button in here. Now I mentioned in the rules for you guys' portfolio, by the way that I'm turning the grid on and off like that is just Shift G. That way you don't have to go back to your grids and yeah. I'm gonna get rid of these just because I don't want them there. I'm actually gonna show you guys a little bit of a different way that you can set up your navigation. So thinking about, let's just make a quick sketch, yeah? I'm gonna go back to one of the sketches that we did in class on Tuesday. We'll start with a logo up in the left. Maybe I'll have 4 navigation elements. Maybe I'll put a button, like a CTA, something over here. Okay. That'll be my now. And then let's say that I want my text headline to be here. I'm going to kind of divide it in parts like this. And then body copy like that. And then I want my headshot to go here. And then I want a few case studies. Okay. Good layout? Works? Sharon, you said no.
Because last time when I said it was good, you said this was the most basic thing ever.
It is the most basic thing ever, but for what we're doing here, I want to start you guys off easy.
What grid is this?
What grid is this?
Yeah.
I probably have, let's see. Technically, it's kind of a 3-column grid as of right now, but really you can divide that out and say it's probably a 12-column grid, give or take. I'm going to try to make it work on an 8-column grid. We'll see how that goes. Actually, you know what? No. Screw my 8-column grid. Whoopsie. Let's make it 12 columns. And then I'm going to change my gutter to be 24, actually. Okay, so I've got a 12-column grid going on now. And I'm going to start with one of my buttons. Let me, now I got to go back and change things.
How did it flip?
What?
It flipped.
I know, I don't know what happened there.
Oh, you do it.
You mirrored it?
Shift V,
Yeah,
shift V,
shift
shift.
V.
Nope.
Select the text, shift V.
Shift V as in Victor.
Yeah.
Shift X.
Oh, look at you guys teaching me
She
something.
said
Shift
H.
X.
Yeah, now do
Now
it again. There you go.
You guys taught me something today. Look at that. I didn't even know you could do that. I don't know why you would want to do that. Maybe with an image, but I can't see why you would want to do that with text. Okay. So I'm going to take my button here. And we have, whoa, hang on, I'm in prototype mode. So we know that we're going to have a button on the end here. And that'll be, let's just say our contact button. Okay. We'll left align that. Then I'll just grab some good old regular text and I'll build that in here. Somebody help me out. We have homepage. Hang on a sec. This is a good opportunity to set up a hug. I'll explain why in a second. If I can remember how to
Can
do
we
it,
just make this component?
what?
Can we just make this component for the?
I wouldn't for this. I'll explain why.
Wow.
Fair enough. So what I just did there was I wrote the text and then I applied auto width. I'll duplicate this. We said about, and then contact, right? Okay. So I oversketched a little bit. Here you have these really beautiful alignment tools up here. Use them. And then I'll select that button as well. And I'm going to do Shift A. So I had all 4 of those selected. Actually, you know what? Let's not do that yet. I'll get there in a second. Let's just add everything in. So the next thing that we'll have is our logo. I'll go to R for rectangle tool. For the rest of your life, you will second guess that. Unless you end up working strictly in Figma or strictly in Illustrator or Adobe tools, you will second guess that for the rest of your life. Here I'll set my height at 80. There we go. And then now what I can do is I actually want these all to be auto layout together. You can have auto layout within auto layout within auto layout. It can get a little bit disastrous. So I'm just going to put those 3 standard navigation elements together into one. And I want these spaced out. They're already spaced out at 48 pixels. That's actually pretty good. I'll leave it like that. And then, you know what? Hold on. I'm going to rethink this a little bit because I also want to think about my click space. So here, I'm actually going to put an auto layout around each of the individual text items. So Shift A. And then over here, I can make my height 48. And then I'll leave the width as hug. Okay. Shift A. 48. Shift A. 48. So now all of those have a click height of 48. I'll actually come over here. I don't think I did that on this one. The buttons should be 52, right? No, 56 is correct. I don't know why my brain does that with 8s. Okay, so now I have each of these individually, they have auto layout wrapped around them. I'll select all 3 of those, do Shift A to add another layout with all of those selected, and we'll space them out at, let's go 24 pixels. Okay? And then we'll grab this guy now. I'm holding Shift to grab more than one thing at a time. Shift A to add auto layout. And then here, it's applying the width as auto. I don't want that. I want this to be about, let's say, 32 pixels. Okay? It's going to move things in multiple directions. It's okay. We'll fix that in a minute. And then we'll grab our logo, Shift A. And then here, I actually want auto width. So I'm going to double click there. Why'd that do that? Oh, I see. Okay. Blink. There we go. Problem solved. Good. So what I just did there was I adjusted the alignment of the auto layout so that the inside element moved to the right. Okay. Good. Everyone keeping up? Yay. All right, so now we've got our logo, we have our navigation, excuse me, and we have our button. That's pretty much what I sketched out, yeah? Okay. Now you can make this a component. I would just drag it off screen together, and then Command Option K to make it a component. Now this becomes a piece of your style, and then I would hold Option and duplicate it over here so that it's attached to that component. Okay. If you just Command C, Command V, it's not going to attach the component always. Okay, so we've got that in there. Now let's add, this is easy. We can just go to the rectangle tool. And I mentioned that I wanted the image to be about 1/3 to the right. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 columns, because 12 divided by 3 is 4, right? That's about 1/3 of the layout. And here I kind of drew my portrait as like a square, right? So I can come to the width, since we know that that's already set up to be a certain width, and copy that, and then paste that into the height. Now we have a perfect square. Okay. Then I can also grab my text tool, draw in my headline. Let's do 48 pixels for the headline and left justify. Okay. It's also a little tall. We don't quite need it this tall. So rather than having it as, right now I have it as fixed size, I'm going to set this to auto height. Right? So it'll keep the width locked. So we don't want auto width, right? Because if I just keep typing, it's just going to keep flowing. I just want it to stay at a certain height. I'll align that to the top of the image. See that little red line? That's what we call a snap. Keep things together. Okay. So now we've got our headline. And you see this little red number in there that says 8? This is a measuring device. It sucks. I'll show you a better way in a second. We'll make this text size 16. And we're on desktop here. Let's go to 24. It's a little big, but we'll work with it. Let me go grab some lower mid-sum. Oh no, what is happening? We're still set up to center height from before. So let me undo that. See over here how it's aligned to the middle?
Would you recommend doing an auto layout over here with text?
We will.
Okay.
So here I'll align it to the top. And then paste. I should probably take the time while I'm here to align the headline to the top as well. And then, like Hassan said, I can select both of these, Shift A to add auto layout. And then remember how I said that we have that little spacer in there? Better to adjust it here. Don't waste your time trying to get that stupid thing perfect. Just come over here and make it perfect. Okay? And then I can also come here, Shift A, and now this is all within an auto layout together. Now, you might be asking, well, why does it matter that I have it broken out like that? What if you just want to make the image further but not the text? Okay. What if you want to make the text box smaller? Grab both of these. Well, then you have space to make this image bigger. Oh no, but what's happening? It's not letting me go to the left, it's only going to the right. Well, you gotta adjust your auto layout. Okay? Everyone cool? Anyone not cool? All right. And then from here, I can add a case study. Oops, hang on. Yes. Add a case study, add a case study. Uh, 32. See why the rule of eights makes everything so much easier? You don't even have to think about it. You just know what the number up or down is. Okay? Holding Option to duplicate. There we go. What was that? 32, yeah. Just because it's more of a headline. And I would say even the spacing is a little off here. So, actually, what I really should have done, I should have only made one of these. Shift A, make this a component. Pull it out here, add that component to the frame, and then duplicate. There we go. And now I can add auto layout to this, Shift A, add auto layout, oops, hang on. And then grab this and this, add auto layout.
So I think your headline went away. Yeah. Yeah, when you copy the.
Oh no!
You copy case study, it didn't duplicate it.
Interesting, where did my headline go?
You just, when you copy it down.
Oh, okay.
You didn't copy it.
I forgot to duplicate. Okay, no matter. You want to see why auto layout makes everything so much better?
Yeah.
Because if you were designing this in, let's say, Illustrator or Photoshop or wherever, you would have to take the time and move all of these pieces down a little bit. But in here, let me just grab a text box. We'll grab this one. If I want a new headline, I just, oops, double click, paste it in. No, I really broke it. Give me a second.
Also, did you get the full text within Figma or did you just copy it from outside?
I just copied and pasted, although I do think they might have a placeholder text. Oh, maybe not. Something for Figma to add to their list. All right, copy, paste, there we go. Now we're working. What's going on? Oh, I see what I did. Okay. What did I have it at? 56? All bold. Now I can just drag it up and everything moves for me. I didn't have to move anything other than the headline. If I want this headline in between these two, I can do that and it'll move it all for me. Use auto layout. Cannot stress that enough. Sometimes you gotta, if you move it out of a section, you can always cut it, double click, and then paste it like that. Okay? Any questions? Yes. Was that a hand raise or were you, okay. Any questions? Online, we're good?
I had a question.
Yeah.
If you were to go back to that image again, right? If the
Share my screen.
your case studies are just above the fold with the headings like floating below it. If I wanna make the headline larger and, you know, have the case study, like drop it even lower than the fold, is that
Yeah,
recommended?
I would say, so when I say that your case studies need to be above the fold.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, let me do this one. If it's like that, that's
okay.
fine.
Okay.
So we can just sketch the.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason behind it is just to allude to the audience that there's more content.
Correct. So one of the biggest things that happens on the internet is, don't quote me on this figure, but I want to say it's something like 15 to 20% of users don't scroll past that initial screen.
Right.
So oftentimes what we're trying to do as web designers is we're trying to get the user to scroll and see more content, right? And if I gotta be careful here. Think about how dangerous that might be on Google, right? On Google, you tend to have, especially now, you've got your search bar, right? And then right below that, you have your AI summary. And then you have add one, add two. And then sometimes if it's really bad, add three. Your fold is right here. You haven't even seen actual content yet. You've only seen what's been paid to put there or what Google wants you to see, right? So you've got to be really careful sometimes about the fold. Really conscious.
Something on
What was that?
she said something on the.
We need to put our headshot on the main landing page. Yeah, so ideally I want your headshot on the home page when you first load up, above the fold.
So you know, a very good photo.
Can it be
Yes.
small? Does it have?
It can
to
be
that?
small.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay, it's just gotta be there.
One button on the side of their face.
Circle like that big. Like a
Awesome.
little Oreo size.
So it's okay if the first button is aligning to the columns. Yeah, so ideally, you want one of two things to be happening as you are working with spacing. And ideally, these two things should sort of coincide with each other. But you either want your items to align to the grid or you want them to follow the rule of eights strictly. Ideally, those two should work in harmony, but you have to set up your grids right in order to make that happen. And the best way to do it, at least for desktop at 1440, is usually to have your grid set up as an 8-column grid, your margins to be 10% of the width of the screen, and then your gutters to be 24 pixels. Okay? That's usually the best way to make it to where both your grid and what you're designing fit the rule of eights perfectly. That's not always going to happen, but that's a little trick I learned. Cool? We good? Great. If you guys came in late, just put your name on the whiteboard with everyone else. Have a great day, guys.